it's raid time once again. This is the Cold War series Espionage raid, tier 6. That's the 81, 83, and 85 targets, using my Zelos Empyrean fleet. So let's start out taking a look at how the fleet itself is built. First, let's have a look at the Empyreans. And of course the Zelos tank. But first, the Empyrean. The weaponry is of course the D100 with a Gale 3. We have the trajectory plotter, resonance capacitor, high velocity rounds, and narrowed firing aperture with 4 D2T armors for additional turn speed. Those come in very handy. Now let's take a look at the Zelos tank, on which I have 4 Gale 3s, 4 Phalanx 4s, a Garwood Gatling gun, a Squall launcher, 2 Trident missiles, 2 D30R impact cannons. Also have ablative 3, thruster 3, agility system 4, hydraulic resistors, and frontline countermeasure system. So let's go out and see if we can find an 81 to get us started. The way I've found most useful at this point to find targets, since I'm not in a very crowded area, is to go to the locator. But as you can see, while these are considered tier 6, they are not currently showing up in the tier 6 tab. The 80s are in the tier 5 tab. So I found an 81. I go down and engage from approximately 7 o'clock, between 7 and 8 o'clock, which brings me in on the bottom left-hand corner of the target. First step, and the first thing you'll notice is that there is no engagement right in the beginning. There's no moving ships. So you have time to take a look at the layout, set your fleet up the way you want it. Obviously I keep the Empyreans back, put the Zelos up front, and move forward just enough to start sniping turrets. And the real key there is the massive amount of splash, which has been very valuable. Keep an eye out for the arc missiles, the ones that MIRV or multiple re-entry. They go up and split into multiple parts and come down. The best way to avoid these in the 81 that I've found is to pass through the center area, or the center channel, if you will, of the target, and work my way back around. By staying in the middle, I'm avoiding the 2 arc missiles, one at the bottom and one at the top, and basically scoot forward a little bit at a time and allow the spotter to find and the Empyreans to take out the various shipyards. There isn't anything, with the exception of those arc missiles, that you can't snipe with careful driving. So as you can see here, I'm stepping through basically one target at a time, whether it be a turret or a torp tower. In this particular target, there are 4 platforms, and each one of them can be taken out just simply by spotting at a corner. And what I'm doing here is moving my fleet around and getting it set up so that I'm just barely in range. Having the remote targeting barely in range of that arc missile at the bottom, and then move my Zelos out of the way so that as I come in closer to spot, I'm still within the green rings, green rings of protection of the Empyreans, and I am out of the direct line of fire of the arc missile. You cannot do that on all of the arc missiles in the whole series, but in certain instances you can. So here I'm working my way around. As you can see, that some ships have come out. Fortunately, in this one, there's not very many ships, and taken out the last arc missile and finished off the remaining ships. Taking a look at how much damage I took for this run, 383,000 points for an 81. And the repair time, under 5 minutes, instant repair. So we'll just repair on the map and go find an 83. Once again, going into the locator, the tier 5 tab, we find an 83 and move there. In all three targets, I typically come in around between 7 and 8 o'clock. Gives me a good angle. And in all three targets, as I mentioned, you can set up your fleet, get things stacked, get your tank out front before you actually have to engage anything. So in these particular targets, you do not enter under fire. It's very careful to watch your driving and stay away from those mines. They do hurt very badly if you don't have a lot of explosive armor. And once again, just like in the 81, picking off turrets from a distance, taking my time, moving my ships around. As you can see now, I have ships coming in from the bottom. When you kill that first shipyard, it releases those ships. And being careful to stay away from the mines, I've moved in and cleared out the bottom half of the turrets that are there. So now it's time to move in and take care of the sides, or the top side, I believe. I take that out first. And once you kill those at the top, the splash damage also takes out that shipyard, which releases another set of ships that come in from behind you. Be careful of those. In this case, once you snipe or get in range and are able to snipe that middle island, the amount of splash on these takes out the entire island. There's 9 turrets there, it takes them all out. And then I go over and do some cleanup on a remaining turret. And here I get a little carried away with the driving. Have to remember that you have plenty of time. If you get into range, just run back out of range and then set yourself up to come back in more carefully. Obviously, I take a little bit more damage on this target than I did the first one, but it's a very valuable lesson to be learned. Basically, don't panic. Kind of like what I just did there. So once again, a little bit of rough driving. It's going to cost me some damage, but due to running away, getting the tank out front, was able to minimize the impact. So now I'm going around and finishing cleaning up the remaining turrets. And since I have the ships coming in, I'm going to stack my Empyreans and move my Zelos out. You'll notice that I have to move my Zelos in towards the ships. That doesn't happen in all cases. I believe it's just the citadels that will stop outside of your range. And basically stop outside of your range and fire at you. And once again, just like in the last target, the 81, the intent here is to move the Empyreans just close enough to be within remote range, and then get the Zelos to come in from an angle that will keep any splash off of the arc missile from hitting the Empyreans. And that's an 83 for 653,000 points. Let's take a look at the damage, and I believe it was a little bit more than what I would like to have seen. So I'm going to go back and split the fleet apart and instant repair these. And go out and we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to the hitting of the 85. This is the final target. And once again, as before, plenty of time to set up your fleet, get your everything stacked and pointed in the right direction. Move your tank out, but keep it in the green rings to help add some defense. Watch out for the mines and follow the same basic principle of hitting. There's really not much of a trick here other than just being careful of what you're in range of. Once again, scooting in a little bit. There is an arc missile on the 3 platforms in the 85. So you'll want to be very careful when you snipe the first corner. The amount of splash will take out the middle, but it won't take out the remaining turrets. So there's more cleanup to be done. Moving the Empyreans up and going back in and spotting for the Empyreans. These are just executioners or Deadeye executioners, and you don't have to worry quite as much about getting in range of those, just simply because they're not going to retarget, based on what I've seen, to hit your Empyreans. And once again, I got a little carried away with driving, and I believe that happens again here in a second. Definitely not a damage-free hit, but it still ends up being instant repair by the end of it. And got a little bit close. One of the reasons that you're seeing some pretty rough driving is just simply because I was doing it zoomed out in hopes of allowing you to be able to see the ships moving around or where the other targets are in relation to where I'm actually hitting. So I'm on the second platform and still cleaning up turrets there, keeping the Empyreans in range, and then moving the tank in to spot. Same principle here. One thing to keep an eye on in the 85s is the fact that it's pretty difficult to navigate around coming through the middle. I've seen other people hit these where the path that they take is basically from the side. They go side to side so that they take out all the executioners as they're going. Helps them to avoid what I just ran into there, where I ended up getting my Empyreans into range. And spotting out some more turrets and waiting on that last ship. But since it's doing a little bit of the work for me, I'm not in too big of a hurry to take it out, avoiding a little bit of extra damage. Now going back in to clean up the third platform. The build that I showed, this build does an excellent job as far as the amount of splash. Does reduce the spread from what is generally standard at this point, about 700,000 points. Once again, going back for instant repair. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been informative.